Good evening, and thank you all for joining here in person, and also those who are joining virtually through Zoom. City has initiated water and wastewater servicing and capacity master plan project. Today, we have arranged our first public information session meeting. We have hired TUI Lean to undertake this project. My name is Nafiur Rahman, Supervisor, Environmental Capital Project Management with the City of Corte Lakes. I am the project lead, and also I have a support with Corby Party, Manager Infrastructure Design and Construction with the City of Corte Lakes, and also Juan Rojas, Director of Engineering and Corporate Assets. We have also some other city staff, Manager of Planning, Leah Berry, and also Martin. And we also have a consultant team, TUI Lean, Kevin Brown, Abe, and also two other staff outside. So now I will ask Kevin to provide the presentation. Welcome to the presentation. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Nafir. And thanks everybody for joining. This is the first time I've done one of these in person and live at the same time. So I'm going to try to, I don't know if I'm going to end up focusing on the audience in the room or whether I'm going to be like zoned in on my computer screen like I am most days. But I'm going to try and bounce through both. I assume that everybody can hear us online. I think we've done a couple of good tests. So as Nafir mentioned, my name is Kevin Brown. I'm leading the class environmental component of this study, and I'm going to give a hopefully short presentation. Sometimes I ramble on when I get going. Sometimes I breeze through things. I have some notes. I'll try and hit as much of it as I can as we go. First, before we get into the technical part of the presentation, give a land acknowledgement. The City of Corte Lakes respectfully acknowledges that we are situated on Mississauga lands and in the traditional territory covered by the Williams Treaties. We are grateful for the opportunity to work here, and we thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. We recognize and deeply appreciate their historic connection to this place. We also recognize the contributions of Métis, Inuit, and other Indigenous peoples, both in shaping and strengthening this community and country as a whole. This recognition is connected to our collective commitment to make the promise and the challenge of truth and reconciliation real in our community. Okay, so Nafir has already done some of the introductions. And so just a couple of format and housekeeping notes. Obviously, we're doing this in two locations, or perhaps 100 locations all at the same time. If you have questions, we encourage them. I would like to try to get through the entire presentation and then field questions at the end. Many of you may have questions that I've anticipated, and I've got a slide for that coming. So those of you that are online, are they using the raise their hand, or are they just asking? Okay, ask a question in the chat, please. Sorry, there we go, remote. Okay, oh, in person is raise your hand. Remote is use the chat feature at the bottom. For those in the room, emergency exits, the closest emergency exit is at the back door, stay to your left, and then a short right, and there's an emergency exit stairway there. Washrooms, there are separate men's and women's washrooms just outside of the room on the left. There are inclusive washrooms down the hall. All the washrooms only have a single stall in them too, so whatever. All right, now in terms of kind of the format of the presentation and this consultation, first off, thank you everybody in person or online for participating in this process. As we go through these projects, the consultation are an opportunity for us as consultants or city staff to gauge the pulse of the community, to see what concerns people may have. This infrastructure master plan is, has the objective of increasing the infrastructure capacity where needed to accommodate the planned growth that's already, that's designated for the communities. And that can be a concern. Growth can be of concern to some people. Other people will embrace it, right? Our objective is that no matter which way you feel about growth, that you're not going to be impacted at the end of the day. If you have concerns, we would like to hear about them. And then we can hopefully allay those concerns through the process. Now, this is dealing with water and wastewater infrastructure in the currently serviced communities. I'm going to introduce the notion of open doors versus closed doors. Open doors are items that you can raise that we can actually address as part of this class environmental assessment process. Other items like traffic impacts, for example, that's a closed door as part of this study, but there is a separate transportation master plan that's ongoing as well. There may be other aspects of planning or the densities or the like that you've got some concerns about. We're not really in a position to address those here. This is strictly about concerns that you may have about water and wastewater servicing, how it may impact you, and concerns you may have. If there are questions that are raised, we're not going to shut you down. We'll do what we can to help redirect that question to somebody who can more accurately or more responsibly answer that question. Maybe it'll be somebody that's in the room today. Maybe we'll have somebody from the city reach out to you in the coming weeks. Okay, if there are any technical issues, the project website is there as well. These presentation boards will be available on the website. Comment forms will be available on the website. A recording of me giving this presentation will be preserved on the website for hopefully not decades, but at least through the end of this study. So if you've missed it, if you know of neighbors who wish they could have attended and didn't see the notice, please share the information about the website with them. Encourage them to view the materials that are there, and if not, submit a comment form. At least get themselves on the mailing list so that when we come back again in 2024 with the next Public Information Center, they'll be able to be involved. Okay, now we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of why we're all here. So the study background, why we're here, is the city has experienced a lot of growth over the past however many years, and that growth is forecasted to continue, and that is going to increase the demands of the water network and the flows in the wastewater network. The city is expected to grow to 117,000 people and 39,000 jobs by 2051. This is all identified in the province's growth plan. So the province establishes growth targets for the province. They attribute that growth to individual municipalities, and it's up to the municipalities to figure out how they're going to accommodate that growth, and again, service it, make sure the roads are big enough, and et cetera. The city is currently updating its growth management strategy. It was last completed in 2011, and there's an update going on now. Council has also adopted the province's housing target for Kawartha Lakes of 6,500 new units by the end of 2031. So we're going to be looking at two main time horizons. There's 2051, which is when all of the development, theoretically will occur, and what do the systems ultimately need to look like to service, these enlarged communities. But we're also going to look at a 2031 timeline as well. There will be a series of interim timelines as well to help the city plan their capital infrastructure phasing over the years. The big point with the little information symbol at the bottom, the objective of this master plan is to ensure that the approved growth can be accommodated without affecting the level of service to existing residents and businesses. That should be the number one takeaway from today. Right? That's the objective. Now, as I talked, the planning forecast is not yet final. It's pending completion of that growth management strategy process, which is going to be over the next 4 months or so, 6 months. Now, while the GMS is being updated, the GMS is growth management strategy. It's here on the slide. I will probably say GMS quite a bit through the rest of the presentation. So the GMS numbers and some of the specifics about where some of that growth is going to go specifically still needs to be finalized. The targets that we're going to, which I presented on the last slide, are generally the numbers that we're planning towards right now. A lot of this was based on the 2011 GMS, which was completed and approved. It also includes some additional ministerial zoning orders that have come about over the last couple of years, as well as some active development applications. These are all the inputs to the master plan, right? This is the information that we take in and we start with, right? The map here, we've got the entire boundary of the city of Kawartha Lakes. There are 22 communities, I believe, some of which are serviced, most of which are serviced by municipal water systems, some by municipal wastewater systems, and a couple that are serviced by both municipal water and sewer. In these communities, some of them, and I'm going to point out Bethany, for example. There are two specific neighborhoods within Bethany. One is Woodfield, and the other is Manorview. They're kind of local to individual neighborhoods and not necessarily the entire community. And we'll touch a little bit more on that in subsequent slides. I touched on the notion of maintaining the level of service, right? And that is the standard at which the city wants to operate their systems. Development, of course, is going to lead to increased water demands. It's going to increase the more flow into the sanitary sewer systems. And that may ultimately lead us exceeding the capacity of the treatment plants, the water treatment plants, the wastewater treatment plants. It may also lead to us exceeding the capacity of individual pipes or pumping stations. And again, the objective of this master plan will be to study the impacts of that growth and to identify required solutions to maintain the level of service. We don't want a development in one part of town to end up, resulting in low pressures in another part of town. To that end, water treatment plants, and we want to ensure that the water supply needs can be provided. And typically, you start planning your treatment plant upgrades when the actual demands through the plant reach 80% of the capacity of that plant. Once you start hitting 80% consistently, you need to start looking forward and planning for growth. System pressures. The city tries to deliver pressure to all residents and businesses between 350 and 550 kPa, or 50 to 80 psi. So that's the range that we want to try and keep everybody in. And we also, when growth occurs, you could be at, your house could be at 75 now. Well, if it drops to 55, you're still in the range, but that's still a pretty significant drop. We're going to try to ensure that there aren't major changes in the level of servicing. And fire flows as well. We need to make sure that the ability for the fire department to be able to fight fires through the hydrant systems isn't impacted. If we add a whole bunch of growth and don't necessarily increase the sizes of some of the water mains, that'll limit the amount of water that you're able to get out of a hydrant. So obviously that's a safety issue. We want to try and maintain that level of service. On wastewater systems, again, wastewater treatment plants, very similar to water treatment plants, there's an 80% threshold where we try to plan for the next upgrade. Design flows in sewers. The sewers should flow freely, right? They should not be surcharged. Under big wet weather events, you got a big rainstorm, some of that rainwater does get into sanitary sewers. Should all go to storm sewers, but leakage and cross connections happens. In those circumstances, it may be permissible to allow a little bit of surcharging in the pipes. So the pipes flowing under pressure a little bit in the sewer systems. As long as the water levels in the system stay sufficiently deep, generally about 2 meters below road grades, that generally keeps it below basement elevations as well. If the levels in those sewers get higher, get closer to 2 meters of grade, you're potentially impacting basements, and potentially get some flooding of basements. Obviously, we want to try to avoid that. So that's the objective. I'm not expecting people to read this slide. This is the Municipal Engineers Association class environmental assessment process. Anytime that public funds or that money is spent on upgrading public infrastructure, we have to go through this process to ensure that we've consulted, we've analyzed a whole bunch of alternative solutions, we've factored in the environmental, the natural environment, the socio-cultural environment, the financial aspects of projects and the like. So it's a detailed process, and it's a transparent process. At the end of the process, we're going to be documenting all the steps that we've taken. We're going to be documenting the results of the analysis, and we're going to be sharing it in a publicly accessible project file report at the end of this process. We're not at the end of this process right now. We're actually in the early stages of it. So we're approaching the end of phase one, where we're identifying the problem statement. We're going to collect feedback from interested stakeholders, and then we're going to do a more detailed dive into the infrastructure needs to support the full build out of the neighborhoods of the communities, and then come up with some solutions that, at the end of the day, when we present the alternative solutions, ideally anybody from the public who picks up the document and flips through it should understand the basis for why we came up with those solutions. And in a perfect world, they'll say, oh yeah, you know what, based on the alternatives that were available, it does seem like the most reasonable approach. So again, it's not supposed to be a super technical document. There'll be a whole bunch of appendices that will be technical, but the reporting itself should be fairly simple. And we're going to be coming back here again towards the end of phase two to share the results of the analysis, the recommendations, the sorts of things we thought about, and what we're recommending. Now, I'm going to get into a couple of slides that kind of indicate the sorts of impacts that the growth pressures that we anticipate based on the current status of the GMS. Again, it's not 100% finalized, but it's giving us, looking at these numbers gives us a bit of an idea as to which systems may become stressed by the growth. I don't want you to focus too much on the numbers. Of course, if I didn't want you to focus on the numbers, why'd I put them up? But these numbers are not yet final. These numbers assume, okay, so two things. So I'm going to go through a column by column. Obviously, we've got all the facilities. So this is water supply and storage. So this is water systems only. On the left, we've obviously got all of the various facilities or all the various systems owned by the City of Kawartha Lakes and operated by the City of Kawartha Lakes. The existing column is what percentage of the maximum day water treatment capacity is being used today. That's based on the last 5 years of data. So if we just pick Fenelon Falls, for example, Fenelon Falls currently is operating at about 41% of the plant's capacity, the plant's rated capacity. And that's what the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks has approved that facility to be able to handle. That's what it was designed to be able to handle. It's entirely possible that there may be some processes that have aged and you maybe can't get the full capacity of the facility through the facility. There could be some hydraulic bottlenecks that have developed over the years. This doesn't factor that in. This factors in the approved operational capacity of the facility. So Fenelon Falls, based on the existing community, the existing service area, is running at about 41%. When we add in all the growth that's anticipated for Fenelon Falls or forecasted for Fenelon Falls at this time, it will take us to about 90% capacity by 2051. That puts us above that 80% threshold that I talked about earlier. So, you know, the city really needs to start thinking about upgrades to that facility, but it's not at 100% capacity. The other note, and it's note number 2, is it's based on the design criteria for future growth. So there's a design criteria, which is how much water you assume that every resident uses, or that every square meter of employment land uses. Those numbers are generally conservative. And if we look at the historical usage, they're generally lower than the design criteria. So as growth continues, as growth occurs, that growth will probably end up using a real amount of water that is lower than the design criteria amount of water. So, and if those numbers are stable enough, then what we can do is we can, from the perspective of treatment, we can say, okay, you know, the new community of, you know, maybe we're halfway to 2051 and the flows have increased by 80% of what the design criteria suggested. It means that there's a possibility that we can actually squeeze a little bit more out of the plant than what these preliminary numbers are suggesting. Right. So these are high level, but they're giving us a sense as to where some of the challenges may be. So again, the important note, and I'll touch on water storage as well. Based on the water demands in a community, there are guidelines which dictate how much storage you should provide for balancing out demands over the course of a day, fighting fires, or providing water in an emergency where maybe you have to have an emergency shutdown in the water treatment plant. There are guidelines for that. In Fenelon Falls, I'll use that again. You know, based on the numbers that we're seeing, it's 122% of the storage capacity. So the storage is actually deficient. Now, one of the things that in Fenelon Falls, there's rural fire protection. Sorry, Nafir. Fenelon Falls is one of the communities where the plant is not sized for fire protection. Right. So anyway, point is that we're gonna continue to look at these numbers and establish if and when upgrades are going to be needed. So the main takeaway, the information bullet up here, upgrades to some water treatment plants and storage facilities will need to be considered in order to support the planned growth to 2050. If we look at, if a facility ends up, it's projected to be, 5% over the facility's design capacity, well, maybe it isn't warranted to upgrade the facility, right? These are the sorts of things. There's a number of alternatives we're going to look at. One of them will be do nothing. So, understand that there's a risk that the facility will not have enough capacity to produce the water. But, knowing what we know about the design criteria, maybe the city accepts that risk. Maybe you limit community growth. So instead of, 1,000 units of forecasted growth, which would push us 5% over and trigger a $5 million upgrade, I'm just making numbers up. Maybe it makes more sense to limit the growth, cap it 20 units short of what's anticipated, and then not end up with, a capital investment of, $5 million in the plant. Right? These are the sorts of things that we're going to be looking at. We're going to be evaluating. We're going to be discussing, and then we're going to bring back to you in the next Public Information Center. We've done a similar analysis for the wastewater treatment needs. Same idea as before. What are the existing flows to the treatment plants relative to the plant's capacity? And if we allow the growth to occur, if we connect everybody, if all of the growth that's planned for these communities connects to the treatment facilities, that's what it'll come to. Sorry, one important point that I missed on the last slide, I'll make up for it now. Growth within urban centers, and for the purposes of Kawartha Lakes, that's Lindsay, Bobcaygeon, Fenelon Falls, and Omemee. Sorry, not Omemee. Omemee. Growth is supposed to be serviced by both municipal water and municipal sewers. In the hamlet areas, which cover off the other systems, you've got the potential to have municipal sewer servicing, but be serviced by private wells or vice versa. And so when we talk about the growth that could occur in some of these communities, again, these numbers are presenting what would result at the existing treatment plants if all of that planned growth ends up connecting to the networks. They may not have to all connect to the networks. So when we come back again in the next PIC, you may see that some of these 2051 percentages have gone down a little bit. And that's because we're going to look at what the servicing plans are for some of these communities in greater detail. We're going to look at the feasibility of connecting and that sort of thing. So again, you may see these numbers change between now and when we come back again. That's going to be part of the deeper dive that we do with these numbers. All right, I got about 3 slides left. Similarly, so those last 2 slides were dealing with the water and wastewater treatment plants and water storage. And that's based on the amount of growth that we're anticipating, again, to meet the provincial growth objectives and forecasts. What we're also going to do is, as the city completes the separate growth management strategy process, they're going to identify a little bit more precisely where in Fenelon Falls or where in Lindsay some of this growth is going to occur. That will allow us to analyze what that is going to have on specific sections of the water main network or the sanitary sewer network, or the sewage pumping stations. There's a number of sewage pumping stations. So we'll be able to look at some of the more local aspects at a neighborhood level. Whereas with the plants, we're looking at the entire system. Right? So as that GMS process wraps up, we're going to have greater clarity on which parts of these communities are going to be designated for growth or higher levels of intensification, or perhaps even an expansion of the urban boundary to accommodate some of the land needs. That's through the GMS process. It will ultimately become an input into our process so that we can look at some of the specific sewer or water main upgrade needs. Again, the purpose of this is to mitigate any potential adverse impacts. So again, the complete list of recommended system upgrades is going to be following the completion of the GMS and presented at the second Public Information Center, which we're thinking is going to be spring, summer 2024. So the next steps. So from an infrastructure planning perspective, we're going to focus on two main scenarios. One is the baseline or the existing conditions. Are there existing bottlenecks in some of these systems based on the existing communities, based on the existing populations? It's important to understand if there's existing bottlenecks, because when we look at the future growth scenario and the build-out scenario, we're going to identify where problems occur or could occur as a result of growth. And typically, development will pay for the upgrades of the systems that are required to service that development. If there are some existing bottlenecks in the system, it's two things. One, some of the costs of the upgrades may be funded not from the growth entirely, but we may also look at opportunities that if we know, for example, in a water main system, and a water main system is leaked, if there's low pressures in a certain area, you need to have a bigger pipe coming into that area. Well, maybe we can do it on this street, maybe we can do it on that street. Oh, that street's already undersized. Well, okay, let's build the bigger water main there. We'll, address two issues at the same time, right? Sometimes we know that, if there's two different options, well, the sewer on, one street was replaced 10 years ago. The sewer on the other street is 60 years old. So if there's an option of going one way or the other, well, let's replace the 60-year-old pipe instead of replacing the 10-year-old pipe. Those sorts of things. So we're going to look at existing, we're going to look at future growth. And then the impact assessment is to identify areas where the level of service is potentially going to be impacted by the growth. Then we're going to identify alternative solutions. How do we mitigate the impacts of that growth? And we're going to evaluate the relative impacts of some of those alternative solutions. There could be a solution that costs less money, but it rips up Main Street and disrupts the business sector for 2 years while the work goes. Where there could be another option that's a little bit more expensive and doesn't have that impact. Similarly, you could have a water main upgrade on a quiet residential street versus putting one on more of a collector road. Those sorts of things. We're going to come back to you with that level of detail and our assessment of it and our recommendations, like I said, at the second PIC in spring or summer. We'll identify the recommended projects. So there will be upgrades identified on individual streets. So you'll be able to look at your neighborhood, your street, see if there's a project plan for that street, and provide comment. Obviously, construction does create a disruption. It's a necessary evil at times. So, and again, at the end of the day, our analysis should demonstrate that, no, this is the best way to go. Unfortunately, it's your street. That's the way things go sometimes. But there'll be an opportunity for you to review that and provide comment and ask questions. Did you consider other options? Yes, we did. We looked at this, we looked at this, we looked at this. The sewer on your street's 50 years old, the sewer on that street's 10 years old. Makes a certain amount of sense, right? And I would hope that you'd be nodding and smiling and saying, oh, okay, new sewer, and the street will get repaved at the same time. Maybe it's a good thing in the end. And then following the PIC, like I said, the master plan report is going to be prepared. It'll be public. You'll be able to review it. But that's about it. We're in the early stages of this class environmental assessment process. We're defining what the problem is, and then we're going to work at identifying what the alternative solutions need to be. We do value your feedback. We've received some already. We're hoping to continue to receive more. If you have any questions, if you're in the room today, I'm right on about my 30-minute estimate. I'll be here. Staff will be around for the next half an hour or so. We'll engage in one-on-ones. If you're online, I don't know if have there been many questions come through. No questions. Is the mic working? Did I do that good of a job? I don't know. Maybe I put everybody to sleep. And hey, you don't have to have a question right now, right? You're not on the spot. You got 30 minutes. Go. If something comes to you tonight, tomorrow while you're having a shower, water pressure is really low. What the heck's going on? If something comes to you, listen, we'd like to get comments and questions in a timely manner. We've established the date of October 28th. So there's comment forms available in the room. For those of you online, comment forms will be uploaded to the website as well. So you'll be able to fill out a comment form there and submit it. We accept positive comments as well as negative comments or concerns. Please try and get them to us by about the end of October. You know, we're going to want to bring all these in. We're going to summarize them. If there are some common comments or some common questions that come up, we'll likely post them in a frequently asked FAQ, frequently asked questions section of the website, so that people can, you know, see what other people have been asking, right? There's no sense in us keeping that quiet. You know, the more information we put out there, the better the engagement is, and the more feedback we're going to get. So the website is there. Apologize for those of you that are in the room that have downloaded the PIC boards from the QR code that's available. That's not a hot link that you can click on right now. The version that we're going to be uploading onto the website, we're going to make that link live, so you don't have to type in kawarthalakes.ca/major projects, but you'll still be able to type that in. When you get there to that landing page, on the right-hand side, there's major projects identified community by community. As you scroll down and get towards the bottom of that page, there's a tab that says citywide, that when you click on it, it'll expand and it'll show some of the citywide projects. The water wastewater master plan update is there. The transportation master plan update may be there as well. I'm guessing it would be, and hey, maybe you'll see something else there that you're interested in. Please also, if you're here today and you haven't signed in yet, please do sign in. Please try and print clearly so that we can get your email address correct and limit the amount of bounce backs we have. Those of you online, you can request to be added to the contact list. You can email either Nafir or myself, or both of us, and request to be added. That way, we'll make sure that you get a direct notification of the next Public Information Center. Our contact information is on the right. So it's Nafir Rahman at the city. His email address and phone number are there. And again, I'm Kevin Brown at TY Lin. My name, email address and phone number are there. And I'm remiss, apologies to all of our friends at Civica, who are our co-consultants on this project. Their logo has been on the bottoms of the boards, and I forgot to acknowledge their contributions to this project as well. They're involved in some of the technical analysis. They've been doing some of the sanitary flow monitoring that's kind of supporting our assessment of the design criteria. They're also going to be focusing on a lot of the sanitary sewer analysis and pumping station analysis that's going to be coming. The Class CA, the consultation is going to be led almost entirely through our firm, through TY Lin. I expect, though, that when we come back with the recommendations for projects in spring, summer, a lot of those are going to be identified based on some of the analysis that Civica has completed. So I would expect that some of Civica's staff will be here at that time, and you'll be able to engage with them. I see a hand up. I'll get to you in a minute. I'm just going to wrap up here. Well, and that does take us to the end of my planned speaking notes. So I will now open the floor and the internet to questions. I see two hands here in the room. Anything from our online friends? Yeah. Nothing. Okay. Juan, you want to address the room first before we go to questions?
Kevin, the people in the online probably won't hear it off the mic. So just give Kevin, I think, will repeat the question.
Correct.
So that the people online will hear it and then follow by.
For those of you online, Juan Rojas at the city has just clarified for the people in the room that I will likely be, we don't anticipate that the audio necessarily from the room will transfer online. So I will be repeating the question, much to the chagrin of the 20 or so people we have here. But that way I make sure that you folks that are tuned in online will be able to hear the question and then my answer as well. So I had a gentleman at the back with a question.
My name is Chief William, and I have a very pointed question. We have done close to 37 YouTube videos on the city on how they conduct protect the environment. We're going to share them with you. Hopefully, you'll share them with everyone else. What I'm more concerned about is the growth that's being proposed. There is no infrastructure right now to handle the growth that we have. system. When you watch our videos where they dump the sewage lagoons into the Scugog River or the Winter Months, and you go back in the spring and the lagoons are empty. We've done water tests on the city drinking water. Okay, not just for bacteria, for PCBs and a lot of other toxic chemicals that are in that water. We've done studies and caught the city doing, breaching a lot of municipal environmental laws, transporting invasive species without the proper procedures, permits, not weighing that product into the landfill, covering that landfill, removing that landfill with a. So what I'm saying is, my question is, and I'll get to my question. Do you think the city has done a good job protecting the environment today? And preparing the plan for the future growth?
So, okay. So for the people online, the gentleman in the room asked some questions about environmental practices. There were some concerns about landfills, possible invasive species and the like. So, and asked ultimately if we believe that the city is doing a good job. It's a difficult question. Now, number one, there are a couple of items, landfills, invasive species, that I'm not authorized to speak on. I'm not qualified to speak on them, and they fall under the closed doors that we spoke of earlier. So I have no comment on that. With respect to your suggestion that there are lagoons that are dumped or directly discharged to the environment, there's a reporting process that's supposed to be undertaken for that. I can't speak to whether or not that has occurred. Now, you did remind me that one thing I wanted to highlight on the wastewater treatment needs slide is that the last column on there was whether there was historical wet weather flow bypasses in the last 5 years of some of these treatment plants. When it rains, there is excessive flows in sewer systems and that goes to treatment plants. We generally try to minimize the amount of stormwater which gets into sanitary sewer systems, but sometimes, some degree of water does get in. That could sometimes overwhelm the wastewater treatment plants and trigger a bypass of the plant. There was a bypass in Fenelon Falls in the last 12 months or so. It was documented, it was reported to the ministry, and the cause of it is being investigated. You'll note that the Fenelon Falls treatment plant currently operates at about 72% of capacity. So anyway, the city is on top of that, is looking into it. Our preliminary understanding is that there may have been an operational or mechanical failure at that time. Again, that's got to be confirmed, and we've got to ensure that the integrity of the plants is appropriate. Now, the Lindsay wastewater treatment plant also has some sewage lagoons. It was a lagoon-based plant. It was transferred into more of a conventional treatment plant. The sewage lagoons at the Lindsay treatment plant are designed to allow flows to be diverted on its way into the plant, into these, and they're now referred to as, well, two of the lagoons are referred to as equalization storage lagoons. So when the flows into the plant are high enough that it could impact there's bacteriological processes. And if you get too much flow through a plant, you can wash out all the good bacteria, which does a lot of the decomposition of the waste matter. So if there's a risk that that's going to happen, the operators divert flows into these equalization storage lagoons when we get this big storm peak. Once a storm peak is passed and the flows through the plant have recessed or have regressed, they do bleed that flow from the equalization storage lagoons through the plant over a period of days afterwards. With respect to your comment about how sewage lagoons are being emptied into the lake, I'm sorry, I can't comment on that. So
We have YouTube videos.
Okay.
My follow-up question would be, we have a major concern with the storm drains in the city here.
Okay.
They're all emptying into the river. We draw the water flow.
Okay.
For drinking water, not only the city here, but upstream, Fenelon Falls. Are you addressing that concern or consideration?
We are not. No. One is. Oh, sorry. Repeat the question. Of course. I'm not used to this two format presentation. So the question was, all of the storm drains in the municipalities ultimately discharge to the lakes and rivers, which is common practice. And the question was whether we are addressing possible water quality impacts associated with the storm drains. No, we're not. This is the water and wastewater infrastructure only. Storm drains often get addressed or often get looked at as part of road upgrades. One, is there any study that's looking at that? I'll step aside. Oh, and for those of you at home, I am indeed drinking City of Kawartha Lakes water from the Lindsay Water Treatment Plant, which was the cover slide for the presentation. I am a municipal engineer and I do drink municipal tap water.
Thanks, Kevin. So in terms of the stormwater master plan, we do have it in our plan to update the stormwater master plan for Kawartha Lakes. I believe the last time that was done was in 2004 in various different communities. So there was one done in Fenelon Falls, there was one in Bob Cajun, and so forth. I believe TSH did the last one throughout the various communities. So since 2000, let's call it 2004, we haven't really updated the master storm sewer master plan. But we are anticipating to do that exercise within the next 3 years. So that's still coming. Now, in terms of greenfield development, so any greenfield development, new subdivisions, site plans, whatever, do have requirements under MECP. MECP is
Ministry of Environment, Conservation, and Parks. They rename the ministry every
couple of years.
Well, every major change in government.
Okay, so through MECP, through the ministry, there are regulations for water quality for stormwater, which all new development follows. When we reconstruct the road, wherever possible, we try to introduce quality controls where it makes sense. And that's not just Kawartha Lakes, that's all municipalities in Ontario try to achieve that. But there is going to be a separate and distinct storm sewer master plan coming within the next, let's say, 3 years. Back to you, Kevin.
Okay. I'm going to ultimately pay for that comment about how the ministry changes their name every time there's a change in government. That was not intended to be a political statement. And I would like to acknowledge that the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks does keep tabs on all Class A's and master plans across the province. And I don't want to be picking any fights. I'm sorry I'm being so formal. I know it's a real drag. So I'm wondering if it looks like there was a hand up in the online chat. Oh, there is a question. Okay, am I able to see? Okay, actually, I can read the chat here. So I can read the question that just came in. Question is, how are we strategically addressing settlements like Oakwood, where Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks now, already identified water contamination and currently running an emergency water supply? We have a project where it is being forced to use groundwater in coming future through development proposal. I'm not entirely sure I understand all the questions or all the elements of that question, but I think Juan has a little bit more background on this. There's a question, Juan, for your reference.
Thank you, Kevin. So the Oakwood, so it's my understanding that Oakwood doesn't have its own water system. It is piped in from Lindsay.
Correct.
And it was done quite a few years ago because of water concerns in Oakwood. So they piped it in from Lindsay to Oakwood for a very defined area that has water. And then if you're outside of that area, then you're on a private well, maybe a private communal system. So that's how we've handled Oakwood. That may change. Again, we're following the growth GMS, but as it currently stands, Oakwood water system is being supplied from Lindsay. We could investigate it further and see what the demands are in Oakwood and how it would feed it. But that's part of the evaluation. So I just want to clarify that Oakwood is not a standalone system. It's sort of joint with Lindsay.
And just for information, Oakwood has no sewers. It's water only. So to the user that asked that question, you know, if we didn't interpret your question sufficiently, you know, I would encourage you possibly to maybe write it again as part of a comment form, which will be available online, or reach out to us by email and ask a question, and maybe we can answer your question perhaps a little bit more fully if we misinterpreted what you were asking. There's a question. Okay, there's another question in the room here. Yes.
In earlier water treatment and water supply studies, it was identified that there was a fair bit of infiltration and leakage, infiltration into the sewer system and leakage out of the water supply system. And the numbers as a percentage of the total water used seem to be pretty high. And I wonder if you would be looking at that, because if there was, say, one or two places where there was significant leakage of water, repairing that might be the cheapest solution to increasing supply.
Okay, so I'm going to repeat the question. So the question from the room is with regards to water or groundwater leaking into sewer systems or possibly leaking out of water systems, and how that excess water coming into a sewer system can consume flow capacity, or water being lost from the water system is you're losing some of the water that could be used. So two things on that. So our focus is going to be on the design criteria, ensuring that the pipes are theoretically large enough to service the design flows. Water, and when I say flows, I mean wastewater flows and water demands. We're doing flow monitoring in the sanitary sewer system to be able to get a sense of, are there areas where there's a disproportionately high amount of infiltration getting into the systems, right? That will ultimately identify that there may be an option of rehabilitating some of those sewers to try and reduce that. It's not always 100% effective, right? You know, there are degrees. There's a law of diminishing returns on that, but it's a best practice, and that's a maintenance effort. With respect to lost water, you referenced that there's a lot of water lost. Do you have a percentage offhand, or Juan knows? Oh, well, Juan wants to step in and answer this one. So I will gladly take a step over to the side and let Juan handle it.
Thanks, Kevin.
I had a really good answer plan though, but let's see what you got.
So a couple things with the water system. So the drinking water system, and you're absolutely right, there was a lot of concerns on lost water, and more importantly, lost revenue for the city's water department. So we compare the amount supplied with the amount billed, and if that deviation is too high, there's evidence of leakage and lost water. So we have undertaken over the last 8 years repairs where we see that discrepancy, right? Both through our maintenance program, water wastewater operations, and through the city's capital replacement program of the water mains. In addition to that, the type of water main influences that also. So we received about $5 million in grant funding for replacement of cast iron water mains, which we replaced, I think, over 4 or 5 years, in Lindsay in particular, where we tried to replace that poor material that's more susceptible to leakage and smaller water pressures because they calcify and the diameter gets smaller. So we've undertaken the elimination or the replacement of all those cast water mains. So those two strategies help reduce the lost revenue or the lost leakage water, which I think are pretty good now. But that's how we sort of mitigate and track that. In terms of sanitary sewer, you're talking about inflow and infiltration, which we do have a study for. So in the last 2 years, in Fenland and in Bobcaygeon, we videoed or CCTV'd all the sanitary mains to identify a couple things, to identify cross connections that have inflow or cracks in pipes. And we do have a program starting to identify and remediate those inflow and infiltrations where possible. So that's a separate study, and that's ongoing. And it'll be ongoing forever, because even if you don't have inflow, you're always going to have infiltration with age, right? A sanitary sewer lasts 60, 70 years, and things settle, things crack, and you're always going to, the joints are watertight, but not really, right? They're watertight at the beginning, and with age, more water gets seeped in. So that's an ongoing issue for all municipalities, and we do have strategies to address that. Sorry, Kevin, you wanted to add on? Feel free.
Well, no, the only thing I've got to add is I'm not even 50 years old and my joints crack already too. So thanks, Juan. There's also a question regarding Fenelon Falls and the historical wet weather flow bypasses there, and what's being done. So, as part of the master plan, we've gone in and we've walked through the facility. We've done a condition assessment. We're looking into whether the plant is generally in good condition. The plant operators do tend to try to report on why bypasses were triggered. Again, Fenelon Falls, we're seeing at about 72% of the plant capacity, so it is getting up there. Obviously, the greater you are, the higher you are with respect to your average day capacity, the more impactful high wet weather flows can be. So it will be looked at as part of this study. It may require a more specific study than what this study is going to address. But the city is aware of the issues and is interested in. I hope I'm not putting words in your mouth. I'm sure I'm not putting words in your mouth. That you're interested in trying to find a solution. So, and Juan is nodding. So yes. I can't say much more than that right now. Hopefully, at the next PIC, I'll be able to provide a more complete answer. I'm seeing no other hands up in the room. Oh, I spoke too soon. one final question. Okay. Okay.
Anyways, in regards to the water treatment, okay, they only test for bacteria. Why is that? I mean, this is portable water being supplied to people, Lindsay, and all the other systems that are online. Why do they only test for bacteria in the water and not all the other agents that are in there?
I am not a water treatment process expert, so I'm not able. Sorry, the question is, why do they only treat for bacteria for the water leaving the water system and entering the distribution system, which is connected to homes? So I unfortunately can't answer that, but Juan has flagged me again. I don't know why you didn't just stay up here the whole time.
So thanks, Kevin. So again, that's good question. We're not the experts on processing, right? That's with, so we have two operating authorities for water wastewater. Water wastewater operations as part of Public Works, and AQUA, the Ontario Clean Water Agency, that runs some of our plants. So we have two separate authorities that run various different water wastewater systems within North Lakes. Regardless of operating authority, they have to report annually for all the plants in accordance with the MECP C of A, which is Certificate of Approval, right? So I can't comment on what they test for, but I can say we test in compliance with the provincial regulation of MECP. And those are all posted on the website. So whether we test for 5 bacterial counts or other things, I don't know. But that information is relatively available on our website, and it's in accordance with MECP.
Yeah. Okay. Nothing else is coming online. Okay. Again, we're closing off the presentation, right about now. We're going to be clearing the room. Again, I want to thank everybody for attending. if there are other questions, like I said, that come to you in the next couple of days or weeks, please send them through. We're happy to consider them and provide as good of an answer as we can. If you felt that some of the answers that we provided already kind of missed the mark, feel free to ask it again or ask us to clarify something, and we'll do our best. Again, all within the purview of the study. So again, thanks for coming. Excellent turnout. Not too many empty chairs. We didn't have to run out and grab more chairs, so we pretty much nailed it there. Online attendance, as always, we do appreciate it. Again, add yourselves to the contact list. We will send you more details about the next consultation. Again, we're targeting spring, summer. So thank you. Drive safely if you've come from a distance. Drive safely if you came from around the block. And we hope to see you again. All right. Thank you very much.